Hello, sweetheart.
Good evening. Namaste, Brother Shankara.
Namaste. Hi, my dear. The early birds among this crowd are not many.
That's right.
Just you and sometimes one or two others, sometimes Triguna.
Triguna comes right. That's right.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, Justy.
Good to see you. I brought a shawl this time just in case.
Uh-huh. Shawl.
Well, not a shawl, but my cool lacy sweater. It's nice to have the higher attendance at the Zoom meetings, but I kind of miss the in-person.
That's right.
But she's in person. At least she certainly appears to be.
I'm as in person as I hope to ever be again.
This Zoom has been a blessing. It has been a blessing, Brother Shankara, last 2 years. Amazing.
Yes.
What a difference.
Yeah. Well, it makes it possible for you to attend.
Yes, it made such a difference.
There's our blessed reader.
Our reader, yeah, she's there.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste,
Hari Om, dear.
Hari Om.
Where are you, Haima?
I
She
am in
didn't-
Denver, Colorado.
Oh my.
She came out here though in mid-May.
Okay.
Bless her heart. She came out here to help celebrate the birthday.
Yes, it was wonderful, very nice. And Sarvadevananda was there, and
Oh
Yes.
yes, I was here too.
I had the
Yes.
opportunity for all in one, all in one. Brother Shankara's birthday, 80th, and Sarvadevananda's coming. It was great.
Yeah. Doesn't help. I thought I'd rotate out. It doesn't matter. I just was trying to rotate it away from the screen, but it's not important.
Or you want me to push it forward like that?
If it'll go forward without causing trouble. There you go.
It is flexible. That's how it's designed.
I'm directing the props. I'm the props director.
Ah, all right. Set dresser.
Set dresser.
Hello, Shara. Hello, cats. Namaste, dears.
Hello, everyone. Namaste.
Om. Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace and beneficence be to us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So welcome to our Wednesday night class, in which we're reading and studying a book by Swami Ranganathananda of the Ramakrishna Order. It wasn't written as a book. It was delivered as a lecture in Perth, Australia in 1978 to a gathering at a Shivananda ashram. We're just a few pages into the book. Swayam, where did you intend to start reading this evening?
I think we had said last time that we would start. Can you hear?
Yes, now we can hear.
Hello?
You. Yes.
Oh, okay. I think we had said that we would start on section 6. I don't know if you want me to start at the beginning of section 6 or the next page, page 8, the 6th chapter of the Gita.
Why don't you start with raise yourself by yourself?
Okay. Raise yourself by yourself. Don't let yourself down, for you are your own friend, you are your own enemy. How can it be that I'm my own friend or that I'm my own enemy? The next verse, verse 6, clarifies it. When one has conquered oneself, when one has thoroughly disciplined mind and sense organs, one becomes one's own friend. But when not so disciplined, one becomes, as it were, one's own enemy. And so, in the beginning of spiritual life, we depend upon and are taught to depend upon ourselves. We practice self-reliance and strengthen ourselves. And thus we start our long march of human growth and fulfillment.
Now, let's just stop there. This long march, the Swamis will all tell you that this is not something that is going to take place in a year or 2 years. It is going to take you some time. If you think about it in the long scope of things, it really is not much time at all. It seems like a long time in a human life, but this long march of human growth and fulfillment. But notice the implied promise that if we do this, there will be growth and fulfillment. And fulfillment is, as we'll learn as we listen to him, fulfillment is a very pregnant word here. Because the thesis of this talk is that to be fully human is to be fully divine. The fulfillment of human life is to become fully divine. Any comments or anything from your own wisdom or experience that you'd like to offer, or any concern or question that this raises?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I have a question from not this page, but page 5 that we read last week.
Mm-hmm.
It says, life itself is religion. To have and to hold is as stern a trust as to quit and to avoid. Can you expand on that a little bit? What is the holding, having and holding versus quitting and avoiding?
If we consider our having and holding as a trust that we are the stewards of what we have and hold. And if we're offering all of that, the having and the holding, the quitting and the avoiding, as was talked about recently, there is only one existence. So having and holding is not outside that existence, but as the Swami says, life is religion. Life, by that he means there is only this, there is no separation or dividing line between what we think of as the secular and the spiritual. So to have and hold is as sacred a trust as we can have if we see it properly. Now, a very humble little story that you've probably heard told before from here is this story of Swami Prabhavananda. One of his disciples was a woman who, before World War II, had a very humble job in a public relations agency. But during the war, the men were drafted and went away. And so her responsibilities increased, and with that, the compensation. So at some point, either during or after the war, I don't remember, I wasn't there, of course, this was told to me. She said to him in a question and answer period one day, "Swami, I'm now making quite a bit of money. Should I have a bank account?" And he said, yes, have plenty bank account. Only keep firmly in mind that the money is not yours, it is Sri Ramakrishna's. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, of course, is the metaphor for all of divine spirit in that story. And of course, in Swami Prabhavananda's personal estimation, Sri Ramakrishna was very much a living being that he actually saw, even though he didn't live at the same time. Sri Ramakrishna appeared to him. And when he said it's Sri Ramakrishna's, he meant it also in a more literal sense, that we hold everything in trust for the divine being whom he saw as Sri Ramakrishna. So to have and hold is a sacred trust if we see it as stewardship, that it is nothing of our own, but the divine's. Does that answer it, Swami?
That part, yes, but what is the quitting and avoiding part?
Oh, that's renunciation.
Oh, okay.
The renunciation is the quitting and avoiding. The quitting and avoiding is part of the latter phases of the yogi path and of the jnana path. It is not part of the bhakti and karma paths. There's no quitting and avoiding. There's a different strategy for renunciation. We'll talk about the bhakti strategy on Sunday. The bhakti strategy for renunciation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else from anyone? Okay, please read on, dear.
Sure. For anybody who joined late, we are on page 9 at the top. And so, in the beginning of our spiritual life, we depend upon and are taught to depend upon ourselves. We practice self-reliance and strengthen ourselves. And thus we start our long march of human growth and fulfillment. All the early chapters of the Gita are largely concerned with this growth of human individuality, with this development of individual identity and character strength as an integral part of its philosophy of a comprehensive spirituality, which is the yoga taught by the Gita.
Comprehensive spirituality. Notice that's the same idea as all life is religion. Comprehensive spirituality. Everything can be spiritualized, which is what we talked about last Sunday, give everything a Godward turn, which is the yoga taught by the Gita. Of course it is. It's also the yoga taught by Christ. So,
Oh,
anything from anyone, or shall we read on? Okay, let's read on.
so, section 7, Vivekananda's spirituality of manliness. That is a significant truth which we often miss to recognize and act upon. Swami Vivekananda presents it as the central truth of his philosophy of man-making education and man-making religion. Says he in his lecture, what we want is strength. So believe in yourselves. Make your nerves strong. What we want is muscles of iron and nerves of steel. We have wept long enough. No more weeping, but stand on your feet and be men. It is a man-making religion that we want. It is man-making theories that we want. It is man-making education all around that we want. And here is the test of truth. Anything that makes you weak, physically, intellectually, and spiritually, reject as poison. There is no life in it. It cannot be true. Truth is strengthening. Truth is purity. Truth is all knowledge.
So would you read that quote again from the beginning, dear?
Sure. Section 7, Vivekananda's spirituality of manliness. That is a
Now
significant.
let's be clear that though he was speaking to men at the time, because in India, men and women were segregated, the women were behind a screen. So he was speaking to men. This is one of the talks that he gave in the collection of talks from Colombo to Almora, when he landed in Sri Lanka on a return from the West, and he traveled from Colombo to Almora, and he gave a series of talks. This plan of campaign is one of those talks, and what he said, he was addressing to the people of India. Now, he said manliness, but of course, he did not, this is not gender specific. So please don't think that he was excluding the women. It's just that that's the way one talked in those days to an audience that appeared to be all of men. Remember, when he was at the Parliament of World Religions on September 11th, 1893, and he looked out into an audience that was predominantly women, he said, sisters and brothers of America. That's how he started his talk. So I just want to be clear so that there's no aversion from the women here to this idea of when he means manliness, he means your humanity. Okay, please read on, Swayam.
Okay. Vivekananda's spirituality of manliness. That is a significant truth, which we often miss to recognize and act upon. Swami Vivekananda presents it as the central truth of his philosophy and man-making education and man-making religion. Says he in his lecture on My Plan of Campaign, what we want is strength. So believe in yourselves. Make your nerves strong. What we want is muscles of iron and nerves of steel. We have wept long enough. No more weeping, but stand on your feet and be men. It is a man-making religion that we want. It is a man-making theories that we want. It is man-making education all around that we want. And here is the test of truth. Anything that makes you weak, physically, intellectually, and spiritually, reject as poison. There is no life in it. It cannot be true. Truth is strengthening. Truth is purity. Truth is all knowledge.
So is there any comment from anyone from their own wisdom or experience, or any concern or question that this raises?
Personally, I find that that's sort of my go-to quote to remember, to escape uh, any reading or listening that appears to be coercive or superstitious,
Mhm.
because it is hard to escape certain things that we have been drilled from childhood, and if it tends to cause any kind of anxiety or weakness in me, I take refuge in this quote and reject it, and
Good,
it
good,
makes me feel
good,
really strong.
good. That's exactly what you should do. All of these voices that are within us, that are constantly making us feel worse. Here's a little rhyme. Accuser, accuser, get thee behind me. Stay out of my sight, or I give you my word, I shall pray to our Lord. You spend the rest of this age as a barrow wight. Now, a barrow wight is from Tolkien, and it's the guardian of the kings of, the evil kings of one of the kingdoms of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. So, accuser, accuser, get thee behind me, stay out of my sight, or I give you my word, I shall pray to our Lord. You spend the rest of this age as a barrow wight. So, reject. This is just, a little bit darkly humorous, that verse.
Yeah, I think that's what I said to my mother the last time we spoke.
Well,
Sorry.
it's okay. It's fine. We're talking about personal experience here. This is a class, nothing to be sorry for. So, anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara.
Yes, Somesh. Good to
Yeah.
hear from you.
Yeah, thank you. What is meant by man-making religion? I don't
A
understand.
religion that, instead of calling you sinner, 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 accuser, accuser, instead of saying, "Oh, you fell from grace. Your life is meant to be spent in misery and servitude, and if you step out of line, you're going to hell." All of that is not man-making a religion. The Gita's call: stand up, Arjuna, fight the fight. Don't be afraid. It's unmanly to be afraid. He actually, the Sanskrit, Krishna actually says to him, don't be a eunuch, an emasculated man. Don't be a eunuch. Stand up, take your weapons, fight. It is the great grace of your life, and it is your duty. And so that's the man making, that's the opening clarion call of Krishna's, his absolute command, so to speak. This is his disciple, his command to his disciple to do not give way to weakness of any kind.
Okay.
Faux consumer, he calls him, faux consumer.
So religion that empowers you to take action as a strength, not as if like from the space of
Yes.
fear.
Yes, and action is exactly the right word, Somesh. We do not learn by thinking. We do not learn by reading. We do not learn by listening to videos. We learn what to act upon. We learn how to adjust our thinking so that it produces a different kind of speech and a different kind of action. We learn by acting, by doing.
Mhm.
And if you want to understand this in detail, read the chapter in the Gita titled "The Field and Its Knower." And this embodiment is the field of action with its mind, which has become far too important in our calculation of things, and the 5 organs of action and the 5 organs of perception. This is what allows us to act. So we learn by doing, which again is a message over and over and over in the Gita. The whole strategy of Krishna's teaching is doing, accompanied by meditation, which is a kind of doing.
I can truly say that there are certain I can give example. There are certain conversations which really scared me. Like I don't want to have that. I'll upset the other person, or it may cause issues, and really tough conversations. So when I had that brought a lot of freedom and strength. So it's aligned with what you are saying. That
Good for you, dear.
Yes.
We must face the foe and fight. We cannot, as Vivekananda said, enough of sitting in the corner and weeping, for our plight. Time to stand up.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I think this speech was also given during India's, they were being ruled by the British, and he was trying to awaken, the masses which had become fatalistic, or what can we do? And
Yes.
this is God's will in a negative way, and very much ruled by superstitious beliefs. So
yes,
trying to arouse them out.
Which is why Sister Nivedita says that Swami Vivekananda had to leave the body. If he had remained embodied, the British would have arrested him for just exactly this kind of talk. And of course, he wasn't going to contain himself. So he left her to give those talks because the British were reluctant to incarcerate women, not particularly Western women, members of the empire. She was an English woman, an Irish woman actually, but a member of the United Empire. And so they were reluctant to incarcerate her. But she also did not live so very long. Anything else from anyone, dears? Okay, please read on.
Brother Shankara,
Yes.
yeah, I just wanted to clarify something, and maybe you can help me because I'm not that familiar with it. In Catholicism, when they say you have to confess, to the Father and the priest, is that kind of like bringing out the weakness in the?
No, actually, it is it is one of the geniuses of the Catholic Church. The attendance at Mass, the taking of communion, and all of that, the attendance at Mass and the taking of communion. You're only supposed to do that if you are going to confession. What confession does is free you from the baggage. You simply confess your shortcomings, where you have fallen short of the ideal. It's not a weakening thing. It's not a groveling thing. You simply tell the priest, this is where I've fallen short in the last, whatever the period of time is. These days, I think it's a month. It used to be more frequent. So then the priest gives you absolution. That is to say, Jesus's forgiveness, the Christ's forgiveness, absolution of these shortcomings, and says, here is your penance. Say so many Hail Marys, say so many Our Fathers for this period of time, 10 days or whatever it is. And those are mantras. The Hail Marys and Our Fathers are mantras. So you say those a certain number of times each day. Then you don't have to think anymore about what you did. You are free from that karmic baggage. It is a genius way. If you're really and truly an observant Catholic, you will come to your deathbed in the grace of freedom from karmic debt.
Thank you. So it's more like purifying.
Yes, it is a purification. Yes.
Thank you.
I agree. There's no, I mean, I haven't seen a better way to complete with your past. Like, you go confess and you don't have to carry the baggage with you ever.
No.
Okay. So
It is absolutely left behind in the confession booth.
yes.
Left behind, and you go forward. Of course, the understanding is that you will make every effort not to repeat that behavior, in the full understanding that you probably will.
Yes.
But no harm, no foul, as long as you're not harming other people, which can also be forgiven. But most of our sins are sins against ourselves, the sins that they're talking about, sins against ourselves. And by being doubtful, by being, it usually has to do with doubt and lack of faith and behavior that betrays that. That's mostly what Catholics are confessing.
Yeah. I'm probably my worst critic, that the things I say to myself, if somebody else say, I would have a big fight with them.
Accuser, accuser, get thee behind me. Stay out of my sight. Or I give you my word, I shall pray to our Lord. You spend the rest of this age as a barrel white.
Absolutely.
Just say that, your own version of it. That's just a little verse. But your own version. Accuser, get thee behind me. I don't need your voice. I don't. You just. As we used to say when we were hippies, oh man, don't bring me down. Don't harsh my mellow. So, this is it. Just internal voice of accusation. Just send it where it belongs.
Thank you.
I have 2 comments.
Thank you, Sarah.
One is another technique I sometimes use with that internal critic voice is to smile at it and say thank you. Like, you are trying to protect me, or you're trying to help me. Thank you. I've got this. You can go drink a beer on the beach or something. Um, and then I just say too, like, okay, I see how I'm like being hijacked by that voice. But then I just say thank you to it, and then I turn my focus somewhere else.
Well, those are very positive and very good ways to do it, dear. Love is actually the more powerful way to do it rather than threat. That's why I said that verse is meant slightly humorously. But, if you think about Freddy Krueger and that Nightmare on Elm Street movie, how does that teenage girl defeat him? She isn't killed by him. Why? Because she kisses him. And somehow something in her knows that if I show him love and affection, it will disarm him. And so that is so powerful. She is not killed. That movie is a big, huge, wonderful metaphor.
The other thing I was thinking was with what we read, so this is kind of a different direction. What we had just read about human religion, human making religion.
Right.
Back on page 7, under the section 6 of Purushakara, or self-effort, it says, we don't begin with surrender to God, but with this attitude of self-reliance, personal effort. Otherwise, we shall be stunted in our spiritual growth, as the child shall be if, instead of exercises in self-reliance and self-effort, it wholly resorted to complete dependence on its own mother, and the mother also encouraged it that way. So to me, it means that we must act like Krishna tells Arjuna, we must find our self-reliance, our own strength, because then we don't become a liability, like dependent on someone else. Then we can become vessels for the divine, like that hollow flute that allows the divine music to blow through us. But we have to have that own strength first, in order to unfold and blossom more fully, which is what the quote goes on to say, that this divinity is already within us. We're just revealing it. So that's why we need our own effort and strength first.
Yes. As as Vivekananda once said to these people who came to him, and they said, we want to renounce, we want to become all renouncing. And he looked at them and he said, what have you to renounce? Become something first. Become something first. And then you will have something to surrender, something to renounce. No, we cannot renounce, we cannot surrender. You're so right, Shara. We cannot surrender when we have nothing to surrender. We have to become something. And that's the whole message of this book. Become the greatest you can become. Become the greatest you can become. To be fully human is to be fully divine. That's the message of this book. Anything else from anyone? Thank you, Shara. That was beautiful. Okay, please read on, dear.
Okay. Lakshmi, or the goddess of fortune, comes only to the industrious lion among men. It is only weaklings that say that we have to take what fate brings unto us. Forsake this dependence on fate and express your manliness through the strength of self-reliance. What harm is there if no results come after you put forth your endeavor? It is verily only through industriousness that we accomplish what are to be achieved, not through vain daydreamings. No deer are going to oblige, in parenthesis, oblige a lion and enter into its mouth while it, again in parenthesis, while it's lazily asleep.
No, of course not. No deer's going to come and climb into the sleeping lion's mouth. No, the lion has to hunt it down.
That is the first great lesson. Gain physical strength and mental strength. Develop your talents and capacities and work efficiency. Gain self-confidence. Practice self-reliance. And earn knowledge and wealth by hard, honest labor. And share your wealth and happiness with others. And earn their goodwill and appreciation. All this is part and parcel of the spiritual training of man in the early stages.
No,
Renunci-
no, just a moment. The early stages. Notice he says, doing all of that, it will be early days as far as your spiritual life is concerned. It may take decades. In the formulation that is used in the Vedic thinking, there are these 4 houses of life: brahmacharya, the first 25 years; the second 25 years, grihastha, the householder phase. Now that's 50 years, up until you're 50 years old. Then you transition, and it isn't an abrupt transition, but it is a transition to the vanaprastha, or forest dweller phase. But first you make something of yourself. Then you have something to not only to leave to others as you retire, metaphorically speaking, to the forest, or perhaps even actually to the forest, but nevertheless that you retire from active pursuit of material wealth and so on. But get on with it in those first 50 years. That's what's being said here. And this is this is Vivekananda's message. Fulfill your potential. Any comments or questions from anyone?
I think there's some practical wisdom in there as well, because once you've mastered something, whatever it is, art form, a job, something like that, everything you've learned mastering that then transfers into the spiritual journey.
Exactly.
And if you don't make the effort to master something first, how are you going to master the most difficult thing ever put before us? And this is one of the things that I've tried to explain to my students, and they don't want to learn how to draw. They couldn't be bothered. They just want to express themselves. It's so lazy and haphazard. And I get so frustrated with it. But ultimately, really, it's sadly their loss.
Of course it is. Yes.
But once you master even, say, drawing, and then you want to learn to play music, it's much easier because you've already learned how to learn, and you've already learned how you learn. And so half the learning is done. Now you just learn the technical part. And then when it comes to spirituality, then you've learned how to master. You've learned how to master something twice. It's all practice. And this isn't really being stated here, but a lot of this advice to stay in the world and master something, learn something, make something of yourself, makes it easier in the spiritual process.
Yes.
And it teaches you the frustration of, say, drawing for years and never getting any better.
Right.
and not giving up and not giving up. And then one day it all starts to show up. And that's the other part of this equation, is that everything we do that's worthwhile may not bear any fruit for a very long time.
And by the way, Justine is not speaking from speculation. Justine is a very successful artist that now sells her work for thousands of dollars. So this process that she's talked about is one that of mastery is something that she has done. So she's not speaking from some theoretical knowledge or something that she heard. This has been her life, and so bravo, brava. Okay, anything else from anyone? There's something, it's in the chat. What does it say?
I think it was appreciation of what Justin just said from one of the participants.
I think it was from Shara. Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. It is verily only through industriousness that we accomplish what are to be achieved, not through vain daydreamings. No deer are going to oblige a lion and enter into its mouth while it's lazily asleep. That is the first great lesson. Gain physical strength and mental strength. Develop your talents and capacities and work efficiently. Gain self-confidence, practice self-reliance, and earn knowledge and wealth by hard, honest labor, and share your wealth and happiness with others and earn their goodwill and appreciation. All this is part and parcel of the spiritual training of man in the early stages. Renunciation of wealth, renunciation of this I, complete surrender to God comes later, not at the beginning. Swami Vivekananda sought to emphasize this truth about human growth very much because he found among his people many who were weak and good for nothing and yet holding the attitude, God, I'm nothing, you are everything. I surrender myself to you. They are really nothing. Obviously, there is nothing praiseworthy about their statement of self-surrender. It is meaningless to regard anyone unfit for the world as fit for God. God will say to himself, what shall I do with this fellow? He or she will be a burden to me. It is not such a joy to have such a devotee. Bhakti or devotion to me is made of sterner stuff. This is a great idea. The sooner we understand it, the better. Says Swami Vivekananda in his lecture.
Hang on. There was some very potent stuff said there. Any comments or questions from anyone before we move on?
Yeah, Brother Shankara. Now this is, I mean, there's another way to look at it. That, of course, there are certain people. You cannot inspire, you cannot motivate. They just don't want to do certain things. At the same time, isn't it like if I'm committed that somebody I really care and I want them to achieve whatever they want, isn't that an opportunity? Like rather than that, won't that be an opportunity for me to look at what's missing in me that I'm not able to do that? What, rather than putting it on them as a failure. Hey, I can take on being not being a failure, but I have failed in many things in my life, and this is another time I'm failing. Yeah, and just don't give up like that.
So exactly, this is what Christ meant when he said, why are you so concerned about the mote, the dust mote in the other fellow's eye and ignoring the log in your own eye? So beautifully said, Somesh. Yes, this is an opportunity to see where I'm falling short of fulfilling my potential. There's very little that we can do to motivate others. You know, we can offer the example. And of course, what will happen in many cases is it will be met with jealousy, envy, and covert or left-handed criticism, and maybe even some attempts to undermine you by those people who are sufficiently unhappy, and they will share their misery. So this is why we're advised, to the extent possible, as we're doing this evening, keep holy company. Keep holy company. This is holy company we are among, not those who are looking to get by on easy street. They so they will. Well, we all. I'm preaching to the choir, I'm sure. So let's just say it's better to hang out with people like we're with this evening than those who are. And Swami Prabhavananda said something very, very potent. He said, people have a right to their pain and suffering. Do not try to remove it. Sustain and comfort. Those who are in pain, in anguish, do what you can to sustain them and comfort them as you're offered the opportunity. No reason to go seek it, as Vivekananda tells us. It will come to you in plenty of guises. So just sustain and comfort those who are in misery. And those who, this is why Swami Swahananda was so adamant. He wouldn't hear the word lazy. He simply wouldn't hear it. He said, no, it's not laziness. It's lack of motivation. They have not found their zeal. What can we do for them? Pray for them that they find their zeal. Pray for them that they find what it is that motivates them and brings them joy and makes them want to get up in the morning and do the necessary.
Yeah.
So that. Thank you so much.
Brother
Thank you.
Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I've also heard it said, and I think it kind of resonates with me, is that what people say doesn't stay with you as long as how they make you feel.
Oh, yes.
And
Exactly.
yeah, and so again, shining by example is better way than saying something and doing something. It's like
Right.
do as
Right.
I do, not as I say, and not
Right.
do as I say and not what I do.
And Patanjali is so clear in the sutras. Every samskara is going to have its effect. So when you embody this and are radiant in the presence of others and share that radiance with them, not saying anything to them about it at all, just as you said, being who you are in their presence, as Patanjali says, that samskara will in time, that experience that they had with you will in time have its effect. Every samskara must have its effect. So replace the lower samskaras with the higher samskaras and you achieve higher effects. How are we doing for time? Okay, we've got 10 minutes left. Good. Okay. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara, it's Michaela.
Yes, Michele, hi.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I just had an experience. I had a friend that I've had for 30, 40 years, and she typed me an email and kind of was verbally, it was a misunderstanding between the two of us. And so she wanted to cut the relationship with me off. So she said all these things in the email. And so I just responded back to her in love. No,
Good,
there was
good.
nothing else. And the other email that I sent to her was also in love. So it'll be interesting to see. You know, I do pray for her. It'll be interesting to see where this goes, because I've just implemented love and peace. No attack, no blame, no judgment.
Good for you, Michaela. That is exactly right. Because I know it is sincere. Coming from you, it is sincere. It isn't a strategy. You did this because that's the way you genuinely felt. And, you know, she is sharing her misery. This is the thing. And with that old folk saying, misery loves company, it's absolutely true. So they will share their misery with us, these people. And so when we can respond with love and kindness and empathy and understanding without lecturing them at all about who they are or what they are, what good will that do one moment? But simply responding with simplicity and sincerity from our hearts with love. As Saint Francis of Assisi said, true love and compassion cannot flow from our eyes and lips unless we too admit that we are capable of any act. And so when I read that the first time, I finally understood why Fred Rogers could say to everyone that he met everyone, regardless of who they were or how they were. He could say, I like you just the way you are. Thank you, Michaela. That was beautiful, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Anything else from anyone?
This I like you just the way you are. The practice of that is so beneficial, because our inclination is to judge, but if we don't hold that and just say that's fine, that's your nature or his or her nature, but then let it go at that point and try to say I love you as you are, it helps us not to either get frustrated or express something or take some kind of a negative step in interacting with them.
As you learn in that language of compassion class that you're part of, dear, when people express themselves inappropriately and inauspiciously, they're only trying to tell us about their unmet needs. And they may not say it very well because they haven't had the training in how to say it well, how to say it clearly and in a way that is not confrontational or threatening. But that's what they're doing. They're sharing their misery with us. They're sharing their unmet needs with us. And that's such a beautiful message of that class that you're taking. I discuss it often. The reason I'm familiar with it is not only what you say, but of course, Jyoti is also a member of that class. And so she and I talk about it from time to time.
Shankar, I want to add something to this, that when we say, okay, that is your nature,
Yes.
then in fact, that's my opinion about your nature.
Yes.
You don't have a nature. You may be like, you may act differently at different times. It's just my opinion, or, my opinion about my nature, your nature. It's just an
Yes.
opinion that is.
You are so right. I mean, how many times does the Buddha have to tell us, you're not the person you were a moment ago?
Exactly.
So, yes. Yes, that's exactly true. But in the moment, we have our responses and our reactions, and we just have to do our best to be authentic, To thine own self be true, and it follows as the night the day, that thou canst not be false to anyone. This is such a great line from Shakespeare.
Can you say that once again?
To thine own self be true, which is the same thing the Buddha said when he said, be a lamp unto yourself. To thine own self be true, and it follows as the night the day, that thou canst not be false to anyone. So, just to be clear, because of the language of the day and the circumstances in which that was said, it actually says, it's Polonius speaking to his son, you cannot be false to any man. But, we can easily make the change of pronoun. Thou canst not be false to anyone.
I am what I am, Popeye.
I am what I am, Justine says. That's Popeye. I fights to the finish, 'cause I eats my spinach. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I am what I am.
That's all that I am.
And that's all that I am. Well, I think that pretty much puts us out of time. Anything else because it's about now to go on to another quote from Swami Vivekananda. Anything else from anyone?
I just wanted to say that this last interaction was an example of the shortcomings of language. When I was making my comment and I used that we make the judgment and we think, okay, that's your nature, it led to so much discussion, but that's not exactly what I was trying to say,
No.
because it's too much to condense into one word. It's my perception of
Dear heart,
this particular
I don't
behavior
think
or that.
I don't think Somesh was taking issue with you. He was reflecting on his own way of being.
Right.
When
Yes,
we tend to sum up things and say that's their nature, that's who they are.
Right.
When in fact we know so little, so very little of one another.
Right. Yeah. No, I was also not taking any issue with what Somesh said. It just brought to my mind that, again, because of the constraints of language, it is very easy to misinterpret.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
You're putting it on language now.
I know. I don't know what else to do.
Well, that is as the saints tell us, language is treacherous. Language is treacherous. It is known for disguising the heart and the mind, the truth of who we are.
When I was in practice and we used to evaluate children with, school issues, there was one test developed by a doctor called Mel Levine that we used, and I don't recall the details of the subsection of that, but one of the things was interpretation of the sentences. And I remember there were 4 or 5 sentences, but this one said that the man looked for the mouse in his pajamas. So that could be interpreted in 2 ways. Either man went looking for the mouse wearing his pajamas, or somehow the mouse got into his pajamas and he was looking for it. So there were like 4 or 5 sentences like that were also
yes, the ambiguity. The ambiguity of our way of speaking. There's Dr. Raymond Moody, the great studier of near-death experiences and shared death experiences. After he was pretty much finished with that part of his studies, began to study our use of language as nonsense and what it was that we were communicating. And when we said something that didn't on the surface make sense. Anyway, lest I go off on a track. We'll wind it up there tonight and start with rereading what leads into Swami Vivekananda's talk on Vedanta and its application. Okay. O dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om, Amen. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace and beneficence to us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Any final thought from anyone?
Yeah, I have a movie recommendation that plays into what we talked about tonight
Yes.
called The Bright Day. It's an Indian film. There's an American film called The Bright Day. That's not the one. I found it on Amazon. It's called The Bright Day. And there's a moment where a young man who's lost and seeking comes across a sadhu, announces he wants to be a sadhu, and the sadhu tells him, you have to be something.
Yes.
And it's very enigmatic. He doesn't explain it. But this conversation explained it. It's called The Bright Day. I found it on Amazon Prime, and it's got beautiful music with Kabir's lyrics in it. And I had a nice email chat with the director from India because I liked it so much I tracked him down. And he said he did the film to give a lot of young lost Indians something maybe more important to think about.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's a terrific movie, and it just sort of an extension of a lot of what we discussed.
Is it in English or is
Yes, it's in English.
Okay.
It's on Amazon, or at the very least has subtitles. Amazon Prime is where I found it.
Okay.
And Beware of the American, The Bright Day. Two very different movies. So,
Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing.
yeah.
Okay. Beverly, once again, so good to see your name on the screen. Glad you're there. Glad you're feeling well enough to join us. So sweet to see your presence.
Thank you, dear.
Yes. And
You
so
are sort of warm my heart.
that's it for this week until Saturday. Saturday, of course, we'll take up the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras as translated and commented upon by Swami Prabhavananda and published as the book How to Know God. That's Saturday. And on Sunday, we'll talk about surrender. Surrender as the end, not the beginning, the end of the bhakti path and what it means to surrender as a bhakta. So that's what we'll talk about on Sunday at 11, which is, there has been a series of talks explaining that definition of bhakti that comes at the beginning of talks. So until Saturday, and of course, if any of you want to talk otherwise, all you have to do is send me an email and we'll arrange to talk. So good to be with you this evening. This is indeed holy company. And so, Om Hari Om Tat Sat. Until next time, much love all around. Good night.